One thing that I always say is, if your CFO doesn't trust the revenue data in your HubSpot and they do different calculation in Excel, that means that your system has a problem. So let's talk about HubSpot consulting, so you understand when you need them, how much it costs, and if it pays back. HubSpot consultants help revenue teams and busy portals in building that operating system inside of HubSpot. You need a HubSpot consultant when your CRM grew faster than your process, your data, and your team habits. In this video, I will tell you more about what does a consultant do, a HubSpot consultant, when do you need a HubSpot consultant, how much does it cost, how does it compare to an internal team or an agency, and how you are choosing a HubSpot agency or a consultant, and what should be the implementation plan of any agency or a consultant. But be aware that most of your HubSpot problems are not actually HubSpot problems. They are process problems, they are data problems, team adoption problems, and the integration issues. A good HubSpot consultant helps you diagnose these issues, maps these processes before they even dive into HubSpot. A good HubSpot consultant makes sure that your processes are mirrored in the HubSpot portal. So they need to design, improve, and govern your processes inside of HubSpot. Every business is different. Every commercial judgment is different. That's why a HubSpot consultant needs to understand the business model, understand those customer journeys and those commercial terms, that these processes for all the teams in your go-to-market teams and finance teams are mirrored inside of HubSpot. So it's not about setting up some technical functionalities. It's about understanding how your processes work and how they can be more efficient. So ultimately, your business gets more revenue per employee, it's more efficient, and you are more successful inside of your HubSpot portal and get the insights in your business that makes you do better business decisions. There are 4 components that are needed to succeed as a HubSpot consultant and to help you with your HubSpot portal. Your lifecycle stages, your CRM objects, workflows, and reporting. The most common problem that is solved by HubSpot consultants is the lifecycle stage design. This is when you need to have very clear criteria, how they enter a stage, how they exit a stage. Handoff, it's very clear from one team to another. So the ownership of each stage is very clear. The naming is very clear, so there is no ambiguity. We hear a lot in different businesses that one team understands something, the other something else. And also the workflow and the automation that happens between these stages. As soon as you solve your lifecycle stages, the CRM objects are important. Why? Because in a typical business, you could have a lot of associations between these objects. So you have companies or accounts. In these companies, you have a buying group. Buying groups are multiple contacts. Then you might have deals, multiple deals, like a new business, existing business. Maybe you have a land and expand. Maybe you open a deal and then you reopen several of them that are related to the first deal. So all these associations are important. A good HubSpot consultant needs to make sure that the data model is designed in a way that reflects your actual business cases. Then we have tickets, because as soon as the post-sales happen, you need to serve those customers. You might have contracts with those companies, several contracts. Contracts result in billing, that means invoices and payments. All these needs to reflect in your HubSpot so you can really understand that business intelligence that these give you. As soon as the CRM objects are clear, you need to have very clean workflows and automations. You need to make sure automation happens in your HubSpot portal. A HubSpot consultant will design these workflows so that the right ownership happens. You have a right routing, maybe you have different territories, maybe you are having different seniority levels, different product lines. So you want to make sure that the assignment rules are very clear and the routing of the ownership for each company, for each contact, it's very clear. Then we might have to assign tasks, we might need to add different checks or different notification to your teams. As soon as lifecycle is clear, the CRM objects are clear, and you have a working automation, now it's time to, most important thing of all, for your C-level, the reporting and the business intelligence. What happens in our business needs to be reflected in these reports. So a HubSpot consultant needs to be able to understand the business and create all these reports that can be easily digested by the correct team. Marketing team might need to have different KPIs than a sales team, than the customer support team, and then a CFO or the CEO. That's why a good HubSpot consultant creates executive dashboard, team dashboards, but also operational views and operational dashboards that help each and every operator understand where they are with their ownership. Let's say you have a sales rep that has deals in the new pipeline. They need to understand at each stage what is their next step, and it needs to be guided throughout. These type of views and dashboard help an operator segment their activities into different buckets depending on the use cases with very clear next steps. Very important thing to understand is that HubSpot gives you the system, which is very generic, but you need to make sure that you are designing that system that mirrors your process. So if we look at the HubSpot lifecycle architecture, here is an example that almost every HubSpot portal comes with. First, we have a visitor. This is owned by marketing, is triggered by first site visit, and usually the exit rule is a form fill. As soon as they fill in the form, they go to the next stage, which is a lead, again owned by marketing. Obviously, the trigger is the form submit, and the exit rule is meets MQL score. MQL, marketing qualified lead, needs to have a particular score, particular rules. Who is a marketing qualified lead? Most of the time it's based on the firmographic. It might be your ideal customer profile fit. You could say we are targeting software companies in Austin that are between 10 to 100 with Series A of funding, and they are using HubSpot as a tool. That can be a rule that you say if these companies or this person is part of a company that fits this score, then they are a marketing qualified lead, which means we as marketing raise our hands and we say we got a lead for you. If sales accepts it, then it's an exit rule for the MQL and enters the sales qualified lead. Now, why we need this? Because when it goes to sales, we might have a process between these two, MQL and SQL, to really understand if there is a commercial value there. Because if they just fit, doesn't mean that we could actually make business with them. What we recommend is to have a pre-sales process between MQL and SQL so we can start to understand if these qualified leads have any kind of commercial intent. They're not just a fit, but they are really interested in our services, for which we need to have a discovery call. We need to have some conversations with them. Most companies just accept them based on their internal criteria of what a commercial intent means. A HubSpot consultant needs to go in, understand these commercial intents, add them into the rule so that it's very clear for everyone that if they move to sales qualified lead is because of these criteria that are completed. As soon as a deal is opened, then they move to the opportunity stage. Now, the mistake that it's made in most of companies, and even most HubSpot consultants do these mistakes, is that they skip SQL. The marketing gives the leads to sales, they see that on the website, they see that there is a commercial intent, and they just create a deal without even talking to them. So that's why we suggest here to add the pre-sales process, which is in HubSpot, it's under the lead object. So it's, let's say, a pre-pipeline before the deal pipeline. That's why we are usually using this lead object. As soon as we have them as opportunity, we work on the opportunity. A good HubSpot consultant helps you actually build the sales pipeline depending on your sales process. Now, as soon as the deal is closed, it moves to the customer stage. Obvious customer stage. As soon as you have the deal closed, you move it to the customer stage where customer service or onboarding team takes it over. Now, you need to make sure that there is a clear handoff between these teams. So at this point, in an ideal world, you will have 4 teams. You will have the marketing team, still marketing qualified lead. Then you have the pre-sales area, which is usually a business development. If it's a more complex product, you might have account executives that work those deals. As soon as those deals are closed, you move them into the customer support or onboarding teams. Now here, you might have those account executives still work those companies, those accounts, for expansion. As soon as the onboarding is over or a particular stage of the project that you did is over, account managers might need to reopen a deal. So this is where renewals happen. This is where new contracts happen. This is when the whole loop starts again of your sales cycle. A good HubSpot consultant drives you through these stages and understands all the rules, exit rules, the entry rules, the ownerships, and all the activities that happen for each and every stage. As soon as your lifecycle stages are done, a good HubSpot consultant needs to protect you from bad automation. This is when they need to ask the right questions. Here are some questions that you might get from a HubSpot consultant. What signal starts with workflow? Which team owns the next step? What data must be trusted? What should AI drafts suggest or summarize? What still needs human approval? How will errors be found? This is where many projects fail. You go directly into building before designing the workflows and having clear governance. A good HubSpot consultant makes sure that this is not missed. A good consulting layer separates 3 things: system actions, what action should happen in your portal, AI support, when should AI help in all the automation, and human judgment, where in the process you need a human judgment. But when do you need a HubSpot consultant? When your actually processes don't reflect anymore what's happening in your system, in your portal. When you see that reports are done in Google Sheets or Excel files, when the adoption is not there, when you start to enrich in different places, when your HubSpot portal is no more, when your sales reps don't do any kind of data capture, that's when you know that something is wrong. The process that you're building is no more reflected in what you have inside of HubSpot. The issue gets even worse when you add the AI layer on top of it, because you might have some broken processes, broken data that you're trying to figure out in spreadsheets, and then you add also AI. AI could add a lot of hallucination and would just see your data, which is broken, and lie to you without even knowing, because that's what they see in your portal. And things get even messier when you have product launches, when you go to new markets, which might have different processes, different life cycle stages than what you did before. There are a few symptoms. One is forecasting, which means that deal stages are wrong and vague. The close date, create dates are not filled in, and there is no forecasting category. You only rely on your deal probability, which doesn't really tell you much, because it doesn't tell you what happens in those meetings, and any of that data is not captured, so you cannot really forecast. But the question is when you need a HubSpot consultant. Here are some scenarios. A new HubSpot implementation starts, a migration from another CRM begins, sales and marketing teams merge reporting, a second market or region is launched, customer success needs health scoring, AI tool is needed for the CRM context, leadership team needs trusted attribution, this is a big one, and in-house admin becomes a bottleneck. But how much does a HubSpot consultant cost in European context today in 2026? The ranges vary a lot. It can start from 100 euro up to 250 euro. If it's anything below, it would be a red flag, or it's because you buy a lot of hours. If we look at HubSpot direct onboarding for professional hubs or enterprise hubs, it ranges between 2,750 to 7,000 euros for that particular project, only for onboarding. If we look at a solution partner implementing a do-it-for-you type of a style, is between 6,000 and 30,000 euros. If you look into Central Eastern Europe, those numbers might be lower because of the geographical arbitrage, but it sits around 80 euro per hour to the same senior certified expertise that you have in Western Europe or in US. If you opt for a retainer where there are ongoing ownership, Q&A, reporting, and different roadmaps, different projects, you can go between 2,000 to 10,000 a month. If we have a project implementation like a migration, portal rebuild, then it ranges depending on the complexity from 3K to 20K, because it's a different project if we, let's say, rebuild a pro or an enterprise portal. So what are the biggest cost drivers of any HubSpot consultant or agency? First is scope size. Totally different story if you have one pipeline or multiple pipelines. If you have a land and expand model, you might have a new business and expansion, renewals, so on. Then we have data complexity. If you are a SaaS that needs product analytics, and based on product analytics, you do different scoring. And you need also the data enrichment for different accounts. Maybe you run an account-based marketing. You have different data layers. Then you have integration layer. Do you need to create something custom for different apps that you have, or everything is native, already built in by the HubSpot ecosystem? Then we have stakeholder count. Do we have multiple teams? Do we have 10 people in marketing working on different activities, pre-sales with SDRs doing outreach, then account executives doing the deals, building the pipeline, and the customer support, plus account managers? Do we have a team for quoting? Do we have another team for building reports? All this adds to the complexity and to the cost of an implementation. And then we have the delivery model. This is also very important. Do we need only a consulting basis, take you by the hand type of work? We do it all for you, or we do maybe only an audit, or quarterly we meet for some Q&A. All these are drivers for your cost when you hire a HubSpot consultant. If we would score the cost drivers, the scope is at the highest, then we have data, then we have that governance depth. How much operating rhythms do we need? How frequently we need to work with you? That's the delivery part. Then we have the integration layer. How many apps do we need to integrate? And then the stakeholders. Now, obviously, it depends on project to project, but these are the cost drivers that we see in most cases. So there are three typical pricing models. The audit and road mapping model, where leaders just need to understand what happens in the portal, what are the things that we need to fix before committing to a longer project. Then we have a project build type of model, where we need to just set up a portal, we rebuild the portal, or we migrate one, which has a very clear start and end. Then we have the ongoing RevOps support, where we do it for you, and it's a very clear operational rhythm with very clear sprints, roadmaps, and where we create everything inside of HubSpot for you. So three models: audit, project build, and ongoing support. It's very important to skip any kind of consultant that bills you only by the hour. You need to make sure that you pay for the outcome. So ask these questions each time you hire a HubSpot consultant. What gets diagnosed first? What gets built? What gets documented? Who approves the process changes? Who maintains the system after going live? And how success is measured? Without these questions clarified, don't hire any HubSpot consultant. So what's the difference between a HubSpot consultant, internal admin, and an agency? Typically, an internal admin helps you keep things moving. It's cleaning data, maintaining the data integrity, making sure that your CRM is clean. And this is very important nowadays, especially if you want to add that AI layer on top of your portal. Second, HubSpot consultant. These are the guys that would help you architect, help you actually understand all the systems, and consult you in the solution design to really understand where does HubSpot fit in your tech stack, in your business model, and in your go-to-market process. An agency, most of the times, would have a campaign and would help you run a campaign, be it sales, be it marketing campaign, customer support, any kind of expansion or cross-selling. So the best reason why to hire an agency is to make sure that your processes are in line with your campaigns and with your go-to-market processes. and all the systems are integrated, so you can smoothly do customer acquisition, quotes, upselling, post-sales, any type of go-to-market strategy that you might have in your organization. A good agency might also be your technical partner. This is additional layer on top of your services that an agency would give you. It's the API integration, the web development, the backend development, and nowadays, obviously, the AI layer, the AI development. And a good agency should look throughout the customer journey and really understand where to put those AI layers, those AI agents or assistants, so that it can help you in your process, so you can have higher revenue per employee. This is what you want to focus on with an agency. What's the outcome should be a revenue per employee. So that's the difference between an agency, internal admin, and a HubSpot consultant. How to choose a good HubSpot consultant. This goes beyond the technical knowledge and beyond the features that you could implement. A good HubSpot consultant knows how to talk commercially to you. It understands your business model and it understands how you sell and wants to improve that process before they even suggest any type of technical or feature upgrades in your HubSpot portal. Some of the discovery calls questions could be: how do leads move from marketing to sales? Which lifecycle stage creates the most conflict? This is when definitions might be wrong and you want to fix it. We see it a lot happening between departments. Where does forecasting trust and where does it break? This is yet another question that usually salespeople have with finance, and there's a lot of misunderstanding between these two departments. A good consultant peels that onion, really tries to understand where does the forecasting break, so that it can help you with the commercial aspect, not necessarily with the technical or with the whole HubSpot features bank. Another question can be: which fields drive routing, scoring, and reporting? This is extremely important because it's again commercial. You really want to understand as a consultant, hey, if we have a lead coming in and we figure out very fast if they are a fit to our company, and if they are fit, what tier they are in. So a company comes in, it's a fit, then we need to tier them. Is it a VIP client? Is it a mid-market client or a small business? Because based on this, you might have different people in the organization with different set of skills. So you utilize those skills, you route those actual leads to the specific people. And the fields usually tell you that if they are a VIP, medium, or small company. Maybe you have geographical or territory planning because you have languages. You have different reps responsible for different regions. In European Union, we have a lot of countries with different languages. In US, you might have different people for East Coast and West Coast and so on. So you need to really understand also scoring. Why is scoring important? Because you might have engagement scoring. If you have a client who it's even small business but eager to buy from you and it's fit for you, you could close that deal faster. You want to route it as a priority for that bucket of small businesses and for those sales reps that deal with small businesses. Another question that could be asked by the HubSpot consultant is: who owns the data after launch? Another one is: which AI use case needs human review? Huge one. If consultant wants to implement AI, doesn't ask you which process needs human review, be careful with such consultants. And one other important question is: what should not be automated? What should be fully manual? These are those very important processes that you might have that you don't want to mess up and that needs human reasoning. Not everything needs to be automated. So a good HubSpot consultant knows how to ask these type of questions. Here is an evaluation criteria for whenever you are choosing a HubSpot agency. Let's go through some criteria one by one, and then we go in depth so you can understand how to choose your next HubSpot partner. First thing, process depth, data design, governance plan, technical fit, enablement, and non-fit honesty. Let's go with the first one, process depth. This is where you want to really understand if that partner will go in depth in mapping your lifecycle stages, having handoffs mapped out, and having all the decisions with your company. So they start with the process in mind. The red flag to this is they start with a feature. Whoever starts with a feature, that's a big red flag. Second criteria, data design. This is when we define the object fields and ownership. We really know who is responsible for the contacts, the companies. One company can have multiple contacts. So what is the ownership of the deals? What is the ownership of each stage of the deal? Who needs to do what in each stage? How do we do customer support? Who is responsible for that? These are the things that any agency needs to understand right at the beginning. Before they even send you a proposal, they need to ask you these questions. And if you hire them and you see that they are adding different fields without any rules, just randomly adding stuff, that's a red flag for the data design. Obviously there are more, but this is something that you need to pay attention to. Third criteria is governance plan. This is when they set review rhythms and QA checks. If your agency doesn't have some kind of methodology that throughout the project you have time to sit down and really review what was done and also have some quality assurance checks, that's not an agency that you want to hire. If they just treat the go live as the end of the project, that's a huge red flag. Usually that's when the problems start that needs fixing and governance. Fourth thing, technical fit. They need to understand all the native integrations that go into your process, and they need to know what are those things that really need to be built custom because there is no other native solution. And a red flag is they force only one method. So when they have only one solution for that integration or for that technical problem that you have, that's a big red flag. Fifth is enablement. The agency that trains and enables the people, that's the agency who's winning on long term because there is stickiness. People will remember these consultants within those agencies that trained them, that showed how to do the new process. A clear red flag here is they don't leave any knowledge. They don't want to share that knowledge. They don't want to train your people. They don't want to transfer that knowledge to you. And the last one, the sixth, is non-fit honesty. It's basically they tell you what they are not good at and they are honest about it. You don't want to have a partner that you go through the process and then you realize that they actually cannot do the things that you actually need. So if they say yes to everything, that's a big red flag. So these are the 6 criteria that you need to look at whenever you are choosing a HubSpot agency. If you are selecting an agency as an enterprise or a scale-up and you are operating in multi-markets, you want to make sure that you add to the criteria of selection the regional fit and operating fit. Because when you work in US and then you also work in Germany, or when you do marketing and also you do sales and customer support, you want to actually have one agency that can support you in this full process in all the regions, in different operating models. Here are some questions that you should ask any HubSpot agency before making the decision. First, have they worked in multi-market teams? Can they actually support English and local team context? Do they understand both marketing ops and sales ops? This is very important because you don't want to have an agency that does only marketing, another one for sales, another one for customer support. You want an agency that has multiple consultants, and this is why an agency model works much better than sometimes internal or just one single freelancer consultants, because you can have one commercial deal but have access to multiple specialists within the operating model of HubSpot. Another one is, can they explain trade-offs in plain language? Can they just explain and train things without the technical sophistication of things? Do they document process decision, not just settings? This is very important because you want to make sure each country and each team might have a different process. So you want to make sure it's not just settings in your HubSpot, but actually it's documented why that setting exists. And another one can be, can they support and run the model after launch? Meaning that you have a launch of a new market or a new product and you want to make sure that this is maintained throughout the process. You want someone that can support you throughout the way, not just for that launch. Another question can be, do they challenge weak requirements politely? Let's be honest, a lot of the scope of work is very weak because consultants don't peel the onion. They don't go in understanding what's the context of particular regional teams and operating teams within the organization. So there are a lot of holes in the actual process, and they are ashamed. They fear that if they peel the onion too much, then the customer might feel uncomfortable. Now, this is the moment when a good consultant can politely and without having any kind of questioning of the process can go into the context and propose solutions for that operating model to be improved. And a good consultant will always say no, and this is the moment where they could say no, when they really understand what is happening within the sales process, and if they really believe that that project is too much for them, then they can say no. Whenever you chose an agency or a consultant or a new hire, there are few things that you need to make sure that happen while you work with these parties. First is understanding a roadmap. Not having a roadmap and a governance is one of the biggest mistakes that agencies or consultants or internal teams do when working with HubSpot in scale-ups, enterprises, or mid-market teams. You want to make sure that, first of all, an agency has a framework that they guide themselves, and if not, at least have some kind of direction of what are those steps that they would take within the project that they work with you. A very basic roadmap or framework looks at assessing what happens in your portal and with your teams, designing a new process, building an operating system inside of your HubSpot, and then running it and maintaining it. In Man Digital, we use the ARC model where we architect processes and what we will work together, so sort of a design mapping. Then we run it, and then we compound. We add AI on top of it so that it compounds and it helps you actually grow. Let's go through these processes together so you can understand in each one of them what do we have. So first, assessment. Here is where you do any kind of reviews, you do the map revenue process, you identify data quality issues, you check workflows, risks, you can interview key users, this is very important, and you rank some kind of business impact that can have this project or this type of implementation or the findings that you had. The second stage can be the design, where you define the lifecycle stages rules, you design different objects and properties, you agree on routing and ownership, you actually set some reporting logic. Here is where you can decide if AI can support you and what are the boundaries of that support, and you could document some kind of approval points. Third stage is the build. It's when you take all this design and you start building. It's when you configure these pipelines and properties, you start building workflows, you connect apps and APIs, you create those dashboards, you test edge cases, and you train users, you enable users. And when you go into run, the fourth stage is when you are reviewing this data quality for each and every sprint or each and every timeline that you run. Then you monitor all the errors or the workflows, you update the dashboards, you make sure that you have refreshed documentation if on the way it popped up, and you improve that adoption. This is very important because without it, you are lost and you don't know who is doing what, in what stage you are doing it. And on top of this, you need to add governance. You need to make sure that there is some kind of monitoring and some kind of data integrity for everything that you do. That's why they go hand to hand. The most important is to remember that governance rhythm is something you want to add in whatever use cases you are in. Why you need to add this is because you want to make sure that you have a weekly, monthly, and quarterly review of everything that you've done. So maybe in weekly you want to just check errors and routine issues, or maybe the users are having some questions and you can make some Q&A to them, and you have this data quality check also weekly. It's very important that you don't let data quality to compound. In monthly, you go into the pipeline health. You really want to understand, okay, are the deals moving forward? Are there some deals that are rotting? Are there some deals that need attention? Maybe they don't have owners. Maybe they don't have any activity for a long time. So you want to make sure that you keep that health, that pulse of the pipeline. You don't let any pipeline just sit there for months. Usually you want to add attribution and forecast also here in this monthly one, just to understand, hey, this month, what are the activities that we did both in marketing and sales that bring us deals? Do we actually track attribution for these? Usually we recommend a hybrid attribution to make sure that you have this data. And the most important is forecast trust. Many people put it in quarterly review. We suggest to put it in monthly because you want, again, not to compound some errors, because then it becomes too big and you forget about things and you cannot really trust at the end of the quarter the actual forecast. So you want to make sure you have those forecast categories. We talked a lot about this in our videos on our channel, that you have that deal probability and you have that forecast category that comes from the quality of those calls, from that information of the sales reps. And you want to combine these two to really understand, okay, how likely it is that you will close those deals. And this is the moment monthly in this operating rhythm when you are evaluating that. Don't skip this at all. And the quarterly review, it's more like an architecture review. It's more like, hey, did the object models change? Did we add anything on top of the actual data model? Maybe the new feature of contracts came into HubSpot and you want to add that, or maybe you want to add quotes because you have a new tool for quotes. So those are all objects in HubSpot. Maybe billing, maybe now you can actually create invoices from HubSpot. That's another object. So this is very important quarterly to look at that, if anything changed. Did any integration change? Did you add any apps, or did you bring in a new tool? This is really, really important to check here because it affects your data, it affects everything that you do, even in your pipelines. So have that time to review it. And obviously AI and AI use cases are these AI tools, assistants or agents or skills or whatever AI workflow we are using still relevant for our business, or we need to actually change them. This is what really changes in companies a lot because people are changing. So it's very important that you document it, because this way you will be able to transition to new teams, to actually give the knowledge to anyone new who is coming, and that's how you become more productive, and that's how you are bringing more revenue in your organizations. If you want to learn even more, check out our blog, mann.digital/blog, where you will find all the guides and all these checklists. And additionally, we are adding workbooks so you can learn and make a better decision whenever you are choosing your new HubSpot agency. Take care.